Welcome to Season 3 of the Recharge Zone podcast. For our new listeners, this is the official podcast for the Edwards Aquifer Authority, where hosts Brent Doty and I, and Margaret Gonzalez, interview staff at the EAA and special guests about the Edwards Aquifer and the work of the EAA, which is a groundwater conservation district that manages, enhances, and protects the Edwards Aquifer. On this first episode of the year, we are welcoming back EAA GM Roland Ruiz to discuss the progress our agency has made with some of the key signature projects that are a part of the EAA Next Generation and Beyond strategic plan. Welcome, Roland.
It's good to be with y'all again. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. So, Roland, in 2021, our agency made a lot of strides and broke ground, so to speak, on some key initiatives that are part of the 10-year strategic plan. Can you give us an overview of your insight and on all you saw happen into our agency in 2021?
Sure, I'd be glad to. In fact, I think one of the things that we, quote, broke ground on is actually the strategic plan itself.
That's right.
So, I mean, we've made a transition here in how we view ourselves and how we view our future. Historically, we went in smaller increments, you know, from year to year, 3 years, 5-year increments to look at how we were going to plan what's ahead of us. And this time we went a little further out. We adopted a 10-year plan. And honestly, what we did with adopting a 10-year plan is we took an even longer term view of what our future could be, and hence the nomenclature of next generation and beyond for the aquifer and for our mission. So really 2021 is kind of a launching pad year for the way we're going to view our work from this point forward. So it's really transitional, but now in some more tangible ways, some of the things that really started to take root, of course, was development at our Education Outreach Center, which continues to move forward and will open this spring. The Field Research Park, which of course is a property that we acquired through the City of San Antonio's Conservation Easement Program, and it was then gifted to our Conservancy, and we are now utilizing it basically as a field laboratory, as a place to study and test and kind of explore some of the concepts within our next generation initiatives, which is all geared towards aquifer sustainability from not just for the next few years, but for the next several generations, because that's, I think, where the value lies as we move forward. So around those two key pieces, those are the most visible pieces of our work right now, the Education Outreach Center and the Field Research Park. But there's a lot underlying all that, and it begins with the posturing of our science programs. So the science, we've said it for a long time, that science feeds our programming. But I think in a very tangible, real way, we're putting more meat on those bones as we move ahead, because now we're gearing all our science programming in an integrated way to where it feeds off of each other and has some significant meaning to where we want to get. And that's feeding the next generation ideology of we need to be an agency that does everything we can to ensure that this water resource does remain sustainable, not just for the present, but for a long term to come, because that's remains the primary water resource for this region. So that work is now more entrenched in our science programming and will continue to be. And it goes hand in hand with what we're looking at on a similar planning horizon, and that's with our habitat conservation plan. So the habitat conservation plan that we're currently under, which is designed to help ensure that we satisfy the requirements of federal law with respect to endangered species that are protected by that law in the two spring systems, Comal and San Marcos, we're more than beyond the halfway point of the first term of this HCP, and we're looking to 2028 when we'll have to renew that plan. And so in 2021, we started to lay out the path for what that might look like. And so in this year, in 2022, we're going to take our first steps. We're going to wade into that water, no pun intended, as to see what we can do to make progress there towards 2028. And so when you put all that together with Next Generation, what you start to see is you're putting together the that's undergirding the pins of the mission for the future. And it's challenging because it's a different way of looking at our work, but it's also, I hope, is invigorating because the idea is to give people a sense that their work matters and that their work has effect beyond their time even here at the EAA, certainly beyond my time here at the EAA. Mm-hmm. My hope is that the work that we've done, not only in 2021 and in the present year, but as a whole, that it is going to resonate beyond, the time here in ways that people will look back and say, man, the EAA really took on some important work. We may not have known just how important it was at the time, but we're sure glad they did it. And so all that's at play. And I think we made good progress in 2021, in spite of the challenges, of course. We're still dealing with pandemic, and we're still dealing with separation from the physical workplace as we've adjusted really well now for 2 years where we've worked in this environment. So under all that, those kind of strategic initiatives in 2021, I think what we learned about ourselves was that we have also kind of grown a culture here at the EAA that is resilient, perhaps more innovative than we once were, mm-hmm. or we once thought we could be, and creative. And so we've learned to adjust and adapt on the fly, and I think that speaks very, very well to kind of the mindset that now exists here within our organization. Because I think knowing that you almost have this feeling that you can almost accomplish anything you set your mind to as a group, because we have that kind of that group think, mm-hmm. and that group resilience that we've developed as a result of the pandemic. So
definitely,
it's actually been in a weird kind of way. The pandemic has tested our mettle, but it has also helped us develop a culture mm-hmm. of how we approach our work. So,
yeah, I agree, and I really appreciate you mentioning the fact that folks want to establish a legacy here. It's not just a job for many of us; it's something that we want to develop that legacy and improve the sustainability of the aquifer, and we're starting to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think at the end of the day, there are so many, there are opportunities for smart people, hardworking people who want to work in, environmental sciences or hydrogeology. There's a lot of things they can do, but I think that the thing that may separate us from all those other opportunities is the legacy component. And so, to your point, we know that's almost a profile trait that I think we need to start looking even more for. And as we look for recruiting new folks to come join us, mm-hmm. is do they have that perspective of mm-hmm. wanting to stick to something and make a difference over the long term? And I've often said that much of the work that we do here, it doesn't lend itself well to instant gratification, because there's just not, we're not selling widgets and we're not affecting mm-hmm. a bottom line that way. What we're doing is we're affecting a natural resource, hopefully for the better. And as a result, you're improving the quality of life for people across the region today, but also tomorrow. And so I think that's really meaningful. If people can identify with that, and if they identify with that message, I think this is a place for them to come work.
To me, that's an honor too, because you hear employees here talk about, 10, 15 years ago when they first started at the EAA. And it's so interesting to hear people's stories, like their origin stories, because you see how far the agency has come, and especially with your leadership. And something I wanted to mention is that I know you've always talked about water quality and quantity with the Edwards Aquifer. So along with the Field Research Park and the EOC that we have established, and then I know it's the 10 years of the EAHCP, I kind of want to get your perspective, Brent, on the FRP, since you work directly with the Aquifer Science Department and some of those initiatives that are going on there. Can you kind of elaborate on that and talk about the accomplishments of 2021 for that?
Definitely. As Roland mentioned, a lot happened at the FRP since we got it, which wasn't more than 2 years ago. We established it as a field research site, and we have what's called a demonstration site where we are demonstrating land management practices that we hope to be a tool in the water quality and quantity protection toolbox. And that garnered a lot of interest from the community, from the region. We ended up hosting several tours out there, groundwater districts, politicians, interested parties, entities, conservationists, just dozens of tours really out at the FRP to get, regional excitement about what we're doing and more interest in it. And apart from that, we also started doing quite a bit of research out there. We put in telemetry in all the wells. We get real-time water levels from our wells out there. We put in a weather station to track real-time weather. We have an ET tower which tracks evapotranspiration, the amount of water that plants absorb. So we have lots of things in place to begin our research out there, and it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, I agree. I think Brent covered a lot of the highlights of the year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important part of all that is that this field research property, what it gives us is basically a staging area to prove up the ideas and the concepts that we've thought about for next generation. And it's a showpiece. It's to showcase our work. And as Brent mentioned, we've hosted a lot of people that came out in 2021 because they were curious, and we welcome the curiosity. I anticipate we'll do more of that this year in 2022. But it's kind of a sentinel piece to the mission moving forward. And what I hope happens as a result of all this is that we start to broaden our horizon, if you will, broaden our thinking beyond just regulation as the solution to managing, this aquifer. I mean, we've done that. We've done the heavy lifting. We were created as a primary regulatory body to put in place a way to manage use of the aquifer so that it remained sustainable and that mainly that we could comply with federal law, the Endangered Species Act. But beyond that, I think if we don't think about what we can do beyond that to shore up the good work that's already happened in the first 20 years, we're not, in my view, we're not moving the ball forward, so to speak. We're kind of, I don't want us to ever rest on our laurels and say that we've done it, that we've accomplished it. And so I think the Field Research Park gives us that opportunity to kind of reinvigorate the mission and open ourselves to thinking beyond just the old, comfortable, familiar tools in our toolbox, which, it begins mostly with regulation. I mean, we're always going to have that regulatory component to our work, but what can we do beyond that will build and engender more trust and collaboration across the region? And we know that, as we've seen already, we as an agency cannot take it all on ourselves. We just don't have the wherewithal in terms of resources, so we're going to have to partner. We're going to have to bring others into the mission, and that's exactly what started to happen in 2021.
Right, and
absolutely. I mean, the Field Research Park is a beacon of collaboration. There are so many research questions that go beyond the dozen or so scientists that we have in this building. And so we've had to team up with universities and other entities to answer these questions. And that's what that site allows us to do. We're now partnering with University of Texas, San Antonio, with UT and others to add research out there.
That's so fascinating to me because I think that offers another avenue for just growth and kind of with the next generation and beyond strategic plan. I think it fits in nicely, like you were mentioning, Roland. We have to grow. We can't just kind of be stunted in the things that we've done in the past. And something I know you mentioned, Brent, is that they're collecting research out at the FRP, and that research, correct me if I'm wrong, is going to be disseminated to the EOC, that real live kind of data, right?
Yes. The idea there is we're going to have folks, both general audience and school groups, attend the EOC, the Education and Outreach Center, and they're going to be able to take part in some of the research by seeing how it's going. So they'll see real-time water levels or weather data or some other similar type of real-time data so they get a feel for what we're doing next door at the site.
And I think that's a beautiful thing because, you're teaching the generations of tomorrow, so to speak, at this Education Outreach Center at Morgan's Wonderland Camp. So, Roland, we're nearing the final stages of the EOC with the installation of exhibits and the anticipated grand opening happening sometime in the spring. What do you foresee for the EOC, and what do you foresee it becoming for the region?
Well, I think our Education Outreach Center has the potential to become a hub of aquifer education, knowledge. And when I say that, it gives us the opportunity to really put a face on our mission. And when I say face, we can talk about science, we can talk about the aquifer. But as we know, part of our challenge has always been that the aquifer is underground. You can't see it like you can, say, a reservoir or a lake or even a river or stream. So it's been a challenge to get people to connect with that. And I think the EOC gives us a chance to do just that, is connect people to the mission in a real tangible way. Now, up to now, we've done that by taking our education program out on the road to the various schools, and it's been quite successful. I mean, that's really successful. We're real popular with the schools across the region. This allows us to bring them to us in hopefully in a more efficient and effective way, and help them immerse themselves in what the Edwards Aquifer is, and beyond that, what the Edwards Aquifer Authority mission is, and how it can be related to people in a real way in their day-to-day lives. So I think that's the opportunity, and that's what makes it, I think, most exciting.
Yes, and I think the accessibility of this center to people in the public, it's a free place that people can go of all ages to learn about the Edwards Aquifer, and in a fun way, a fun, interactive way.
Definitely. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit to go back to a statement you kind of talked about in your introduction, and that's about the HCP. As many of our listeners know, protecting endangered species through the Edwards Aquifer HCP is an important part of our mission. And we know the EAA is set to renew that permit that we first established, and that's going to be renewed in 2028. So what are we doing now, Roland, to prepare for that renewal event?
I think, and I got to say that, first of all, the key foundational piece to the next HCP, or the renewal process, is the success of the first HCP. So we've gotten past the first phase of the 15-year HCP that we currently have, and when we got to that midway point, we did an analysis of how we're doing, and honestly, it's gone very well. We've proven ourselves, I think, with the conservation measures and everything that's taken place within the existing HCP. So I think in 2022, what we're going to do, we're going to start to host listen and learn sessions across the region with our stakeholders. And we say listen and learn it's mainly learning from ourselves to some extent, but also our partners in the HCP about what's really worked well, what hasn't worked well, what can we do to improve moving forward, so we can come to some consensus on what that needs to be. I think there's a real opportunity to incorporate some of the concepts of next generation into the next HCP to give it some sustenance over the long term, because when we're talking about next generation concepts, we're talking about improving water quality protection, and to whatever degree we can, protecting historic recharge to the aquifer. All that's meaningful to continued spring flows and continued good water quality for those springs. So I think there's a connection there. How we marry the two, it remains to be seen. But that's one of the things that I'm looking forward to exploring in 2022 with our partners in the HCP. And so, just like we did with in the fledgling stages of the first HCP back in 2007, when we started developing relationships with our stakeholders, we started by simply conversations. And I think we're going to kind of replicate that to some degree by having conversations. The difference is going to be that we now have real practical experience. We have a real meaningful success story from which to build. And so I think it makes it much easier, because we now have a platform to build from. The foundation's been laid. We just need to see, okay, where else do we want to develop this effort moving forward? But I think, I credit all the hard work that not only our staff has done, but our partners across the region on making sure that this HCP has been successful as it's been.
Right. If you look at the science side, back in 2007, we knew that the species were endangered. But beyond that, there was a lot of unknowns. We didn't know how many of them there were, how they lived, what their habitat was like. And so we've conducted studies all along the way that are going to help us in the renewal period better plan for each individual species.
Right. And let me also add this too, that it's not just about species because, I mean, that's important. That's what we're trying to ensure compliance with those laws and protective measures that need to be there. But when we do that, when we're successful with that, what we're doing is we're securing water supply out of the Edwards for the long term. And so it goes hand in hand when we talk about sustainability. Yes, you're ensuring the sustainability of those species, but you're also, in doing so, you're adding certainty to the reliability of the aquifer from a regulatory perspective and also from a real hydrologic perspective, that the water is going to be there and it's going to be of a good quality. And, I've said it before that it's not enough just to ensure that we have enough water, but part of our mission is to ensure that it is of a high quality, because if you don't have quality water, you can have all the water you want, but you still can't use it. So it's not, what have you done in terms of sustainability? And I think the next generation message envelops all that together as we look at the future.
You think about the critical period management, like what you're talking about, the parameters in place to not only protect the species and the spring flow, but protect the water for the region in our jurisdiction that, accesses this water and uses it. So that makes perfect sense to me.
Right. I get the question a lot. Why do you try so hard to protect these salamanders and fountain darters that don't affect our daily life? And my answer is, well, if they're doing well, you're doing well. Your water system is working. But if they're not doing well, that speaks volumes about how we're managing and sustaining this aquifer.
Right. If they're not doing well, chances are that the aquifer system itself is not doing as well as it could, and that means our water supply, and that means our community's well-being and welfare and economic well-being. So it all goes hand in hand.
Well, Roland, since we have you here today, this is your 16th year here at the EAA and 10-year anniversary as the general manager, which is an awesome accomplishment.
Very much so.
So we wanted to ask you to take a look back at this decade of progress and maybe provide some of your personal insights and highlights here at the EAA, and maybe some of the biggest lessons you've learned.
As I look back, I think, there are certainly lessons learned. One of them, as I look back, I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. That's lesson number one. But it turned out to be that you don't have to have all the answers. I didn't have all the answers. Frankly, I didn't have any answers. But I thought I knew what we had here in the organization in terms of a culture, in terms of people, and that's frankly what motivated me to even attempt to try to be the general manager. Was that I thought, man, there's a lot of good people here. They're doing good work. We can build on that. I didn't know exactly how, but I just knew we could build on that, and maybe I can be a conduit for that. But the lessons that I've learned, and I thought about that, and there was three that come to mind. And number one was that we're only as good as the sum of our parts. So we can have superstars here or there, but if we don't work together, if we don't come together and collaborate and open ourselves up to each other to lean on each other through this work, we're not going to get it done. So we're only as good as the sum of our parts. It's like a team. Superstars or not, if the team doesn't work well together, they don't get much done, and it shows up in the record. And so that's one of the lessons. Through all that, I've learned also that trust is our greatest currency as an organization. And you might think, well, but we're science and we're regulatory. Yes, we're all that. But without trust, we don't have the platform. We don't have the way to share all that we know and all that we're capable of. So building trust through relationships has been critical. And that's not an easy process. That takes time. And I'll say it takes building trust first inside the organization, and then once you start doing that inside, the hope is that it starts to spill out into the out of the organization, into the community. And when I first took the role as general manager, that's something that I told the board, we're going to start with building this culture inside, and then it's going to grow from the inside out. And I think that's what's happened. I'm never going to say that we're completely there yet, because we're an evolving, changing entity, as most organizations are. So we always have to be mindful of continuing to monitor and our growth and make sure that we're not just stunting our growth or becoming complacent. And then thirdly, in all of that, I also learned that the more that we let go, the more we gain. And what I mean by that is that I think as an agency that came into being 25 years ago out of a lot of conflict and a lot of chaos, for a long time, I think we were almost afraid of our own shadow. We were mindful, maybe to our own detriment, of kind of letting go of our work, in the sense, and when I say that, about opening ourselves up to some more creative thoughts, some more the kind of collaboration that we're now doing and talking about. It was probably just part of the nature of the work at the time when we came into being, that the EAA was not viewed as a, we weren't going to win any popularity contests at the time. And so, that hinders your ability to kind of think outside the box. I think now, though, we're able to do that because we've answered the critics by the proof of our work. We've sustained the challenges. For the first time in a long time, there is not one case on our legal docket against the EAA. And so those things don't just happen. They happen because people are being forward-thinking, strategic, and opening themselves up to invite others to be part of the mission. So being more inclusive, I think, is part of that. So the more we let go, the more we gain, because the more we invite in, and that's where we are now. We're inviting more people into the mission, and there was a time where I think we were a little hesitant to do that because we perceived that we didn't have a whole lot of friends out there. So we're making friends, and we've made friends, and we're going to continue to make friends, and we're going to continue to build those alliances and partnerships. And so those are the lessons learned for me, and I think it's also kind of the motivating factors going forward.
I think, like you mentioned, 25 years was, what happened last year in 2021, we celebrated our 25th anniversary. And I think looking just at the historic timeline of everything, I see everything you just said play out, and it's been playing out for years and years. And I think the EAA has established itself as a credible, reliable resource to the region and our jurisdiction through the science, through the regulation, and then through, education and all the things that we have to offer. So I appreciate all that you've done, Roland. I think you've kind of paved the way. And I think with this next generation strategic plan, I can kind of foresee all of the visions and things that you have planned for the EAA and the EOC and the FRP and the HCP and all of these different things. I can see it kind of growing, and
all the acronyms.
Right? I know there's so many acronyms, but I see it becoming like what we kind of envision for the next phase of our agency and beyond.
Yeah, I'm going to second Ann-Margaret. I really appreciate, Roland, your time here, having been here for that whole 10 years, and then 2 years before that on your team. Just the evolution of the work culture here and the establishment of the core values and the refinement of those core values to get a work culture that brings in folks who really want that legacy that we talked about before. And I've seen that over this decade, and I really appreciate that from you.
Well, thank you. And it's not, I gotta say, it's not just me. There's y'all are part of it. I mean, y'all have bought into that culture idea, and y'all perpetuate it through podcasts, through all the work that y'all do. So, and that's the idea, that it's, like I said, it's the sum of our parts. It's all of us working together and pulling together. And when that happens, and also the workplace becomes more fun over time. So it's not a chore to get up and go to work. In the pandemic, it's not a chore to get up and go to your home office and log on. But anyway, I'm also hopeful that in 2022 we'll be able to have more in-person, face-to-face interactions that we've lost over the past 2 years, because I think that also plays a part in developing a culture.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time and efforts.
Thank you all very much. Enjoyed it.
Thank you all for tuning into the first episode of Season 3 for the Recharge Zone podcast. Have questions, ideas for topics, or things you would like to share with us? Well, reach out to us at rechargezone@edwardsaquifer.org.